Hey, hello, hi, it's me, the man of God, the man of the people, my people, which is you guys. Now, don't tear up on me, my friend. I hate it when you get into your feels like this. There's no point even trying to comfort you right now. I'm just gonna get on with the video. For the past year or two, I have been peer pressured by the internet and my friends to play the Yakuza series. I've heard there's nothing quite like them. They're in a league of their own in terms of the world, the combat. The story, characters, and side activities. Due to this, I put the game off for a long while, because I wanted to find the time to really dedicate my spirit, soul, and body to this pilgrimage for a whole week or so. And fortunately, I found that time recently and managed to complete Yakuza 0, which is frequently said to be the best game in the franchise, in terms of story and characters. So needless to say, when I finally started playing, my expectations were through the roof, through the sky, through the Earth's atmosphere. Fortunately, I can say that not only did Yakuza 0 live up to my expectations, the story exceeded my expectations by a mile. Or a kilometer if you're stupid. So let's dive into the story I keep waffling so much about. Yakuza 0 is centered around two very charismatic and handsome protagonists, one being Kazuma KIRYU, who's exiled from his Yakuza family after being framed for a murder that disrupts his crime family's plans. KIRYU is the main protagonist of the Yakuza franchise, but in 0 he shares the spotlight with the coolest restaurant waiter ever, Majima. Majima's story begins a few hours into the game, and we find out that he is the manager of the hottest cabaret club in town. He also has a thing for fancy wine being doused all over him. Kind of weird, but Majima makes it look classy, refined even. What I really like about these characters is that they're not one-dimensional. While they may appear a certain way at first glance, you later realize they have goals they want to achieve, things that motivate them to continue living their life of crime. I find this easy to relate to as I sell illegal pills on the streets. And it's not just the protagonists that are this fleshed out, it's the whole main cast. Nishikiyama, for example, who is the closest thing that Kiryu has to a brother. The beginning of the game portrays Nishiki as somewhat of a flashy playboy, a big spender. However, the more you discover about his character, the more you realize that the most important thing to Nishiki isn't the money, the women, or the clothes, it's Kiryu, and he'll go to extreme lengths to keep his brother safe. Another example of great character writing is Makoto, who is a blind girl that Majima is tasked with assassinating, but they end up building a deep connection instead that Majima can't force himself to break. And while the player may believe they know everything about Makoto, thinking she's just an innocent girl that caught the Yakuza's attention, we later find out that all the major aspects of the story link back to Makoto and her past. Again, what I'm trying to say is that the characters are written so well that they feel like real people at points, all with their own real personalities and motives. Call me parasocial, but I'll have you know that some of these characters love me just like I love them. The story itself is action-packed, but also deeply emotional when it wants to be. It feels like a big-budget film starring several protagonists and antagonists, some of whom the player learned to love and want to see more of due to the great character development the game features. Yakuza 0 actually birthed one of the coolest villains ever. Just looking at this guy's combat stance proves my point. Oh, and don't even get me started on those cutscenes. Every major moment of the game comes with a big cinematic cutscene, and the devs did a really good job with these. They look amazing. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone to try out the game just for the story, but there's even more to the game than that, so let's talk about the gameplay and specifically the combat. As is to be expected for a video game based on crime life, Yakuza 0 features a combat system, and a very fun one at that. So the combat itself is pretty basic, mainly being light attack, heavy attack, and grab, all of which you can mix and create combos for more damage and a better flow in fights. This is fun enough in itself, but things get even more interesting with combat styles. Basically, when you're in a fight, you can switch your stance to better suit your circumstances. KIRYU has 3 combat styles he can switch between, as does Majima, but I'll only talk about KIRYU's combat in this video. There's the Brawler style, which is KIRYU's default style. It's the one you start off with and is the most well-rounded one. It balances itself between being a heavy hitter, but also being pretty fast, so it's very flexible actually. I spent the majority of my playthrough using Brawler, only switching to the other 2 if the need arose, which is what's great about these styles. The player can make the decision on whether to switch to a different style or not. Moving on to the Rush style, this one, as the name suggests, is the speedy one, focused on quick movement, dodging, and attacks. And I'll tell you what, when KIRYU is using Rush, he genuinely becomes superhuman. This dude becomes the Flash, breaking through the multiverse with his pure speed. Like bro, look at all this. Rush is well suited for dealing with bosses as well as small groups of enemies. And finally, we've got the Beast style. This bad boy was my least used style, but it is pretty darn cool. KIRYU automatically picks up any objects in his vicinity to slam his enemies with. This one is typically useful for dealing with large groups of enemies, as it's way harder for KIRYU to get knocked down or interrupted. People in my everyday life call me morbidly a beast, so I'm basically like the real life KIRYU. Now, the combat styles feature isn't a huge addition, but it adds so much to an otherwise fairly simple fighting system. It's a nice touch. There's one thing I'm pretty upset by, and that's that the Dragon engine wasn't used to develop Yakuza 0. If you haven't heard of this game engine, well, you're in for a treat. It's a thing of beauty, truly. The Dragon engine is known for improving the combat of the Yakuza games with flawless transitions into fights, but most importantly for its ragdoll physics. It's first used in Yakuza Kiwami 2, which is the 3rd game in the story, so I guess that gives me even more initiative to play the game, more than I already have. Yakuza 0, as well as literally the entire Yakuza franchise, is set in the city of Kamurocho, known for its entertainment, its nightlife, and of course, its crime. The city has a wide array of side activities and missions to participate in, as does every Yakuza game. You can go to the arcade and play classic Sega games on the machines, or you can play the claw machine and win some teddy bears. You can go batting, eat at various restaurants and cafes, gamble in a casino, or gamble at a questionable and probably illegal fighting ring. The map is chock full of things to do, either to benefit your character, such as to make money and regain health, or just to take a break from the main story. On that note, Kamurocho has side quests scattered everywhere, the majority of them being silly and light-hearted, which is certainly a contrast from the intense main storyline. For example, there's a side story where a girl asks you to pretend to be their partner and go meet their father without arousing suspicion that you're not actually courting his daughter. There's another side story where you happen to meet an influential politician and advise him on how to deal with the public's hatred of said politician. A lot of the side missions are somewhat relevant to what part of the main story you're at, and can show off the character development that both KIRYU and Majima go through. And the way that the game encourages you to visit or encounter these things in the city is by going for a more condensed open world. The map is actually really small, only allowing the player to stay inside a small portion of the city, which means there's never a dull moment of sprinting from point A to point B. You're bound to come across various encounters throughout the map constantly. I do like big, impressive open worlds sometimes, but the decision to focus on the quality of the map rather than the size was the best decision the devs could have made for Yakuza 0. I can't speak for the franchise as a whole just yet, but I think that Yakuza 0 is amazing. It manages to immerse you into both the story, which feels like a drama straight from a TV series, and it immerses you into its world. You start to memorize each street as they're so distinct and each have their own activities and facilities to attend. The game manages to balance the goofiness of the random encounters on the streets with the action-packed combat and the touching and dramatic story so perfectly. It all feels so natural. I urge you to get your fat self out of bed right now and go buy the game ASAP, because this is one of those games you have to play before you die, by my hands, in an alley on the night of November 25th. this year. Now, here's a fun fact about raccoons. Some scholars and researchers suggest that raccoons may be more intelligent than domestic cats, hence why my videos are always so informative and witty. Subscribe.